this is the really great thing that I keep hearing is everybody understands that it's a very valuable tool for their developers to be productive. They want their developers to have the best tools to do their job, but they have to keep everybody safe within the guidelines of how corporations have to work. And so after having lots and lots of interviews, that's where we landed on building Workbrew what it is today.
Hey, John.
Hey, Glenn, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for making the time.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
All right. So to get started, first and foremost, what does Workbrew do and who is it for?
So Workbrew is a software delivery platform. It's built on top of the very successful open source package manager Homebrew, which is installed on close to 30 million devices, mostly macOS, and has a library of close to 15,000 software packages available. And what we're doing is we're making it easy for teams of all sizes, from startups to enterprises, to centralize and manage how developers get their developer tools installed onto their workstations, and also just how creative professionals get software on their devices.
Okay, so for people that are not familiar with Homebrew, tell us more about Homebrew. Like why do
Mhm.
developers actually need it and what are they doing with it?
So Homebrew is what's called a system package manager. It lets you have kind of like an app store. For developers, they go in on the command line, they type brew install, let's say Python, and they get all the things that they need to run and build Python applications on their device. It's really common coming from a Unix background to have a system package manager built into your operating system. So if you're familiar with Ubuntu, you might have used apt before. But on Mac, there's no system level package manager included by default. So Homebrew's been around for close to 15 years, actually just over 15 years. We celebrated the 15th anniversary a couple months ago. But before Homebrew existed, there were other package managers on Mac OS. But what happened was when Homebrew came to town and started getting used by developers, it really had a competitive advantage in being a collaboratively managed open source package manager that was pretty much, I think, the first package manager to be on GitHub natively. So it made it really easy for anybody to come in and contribute a new package or update an existing package. So kind of all that to say that it's essentially a terminal-based app store for developers where you can get all the tools that you need to do your work.
Perfect. So when you think about Workbrew, right, and the need for Workbrew versus Homebrew, I think in a lot of markets we think about, okay, what are some of the other existing solutions that customers are using to sort of band-aid together a problem right now?
Mhm.
Workbrew, there's really no true competition, right? So what do you think about in terms of the need to switch from using just Homebrew to, really requiring Workbrew?
So I wouldn't say we have no competitors. It's more that our competitors aren't products. The most
Right.
popular competitor we have, we call it do nothing. So we see companies of all sizes, they're dependent on Homebrew already today. Many of their engineers are using it every day to, be productive at their work, but it's kind of just hush hush. They look the other way and they don't do anything about it. And that's not to say that Homebrew itself is inherently insecure or a problem, but as you add more devices into the mix, you grow from a team of, 3, 5, 10 to 100, 1,000, or tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of devices. The type of problems you need to solve are very different. And so with Workbrew, what we're aiming to do is make it really easy for teams of all sizes to centralize and manage how Homebrew or how their package delivery is managed inside their fleet. Besides the idea of doing nothing, another really common competitor that we have is informed trust. So the idea is that maybe we understand that the supply chain, the software supply chain could be risky, and we want to make sure that we're looking at the dependencies the developers are using before we add them into our tool chain. And so we write some documentation, we train our team, and we take them through a process where we put it in the hands of the developers or the hands of the end users to evaluate whether something is safe or not. And this is really a common use case. But at a certain stage, especially when you get into like regulated industries, banking, healthcare, finance, government, that's not acceptable. Informed trust is
Yeah.
just not good enough. And so the last kind of big competitor that we have is roll your own, going out and building your own tooling to automate deployment, to standardize developer environments, to set
Yeah.
policies, to keep things up to date, to look for vulnerabilities, and to mitigate problems. So those are our big competitors, and we're kind of the team that's most well suited to build these things. I have two co-founders, Mike and Vanessa. My background, I've been building developer tools for 15 plus years. I worked at Twilio really early. I led developer marketing at GitHub. I worked with Mike and Vanessa at GitHub for quite a while. Vanessa is on the project leadership committee of Homebrew, the open source project. I'm a contributor to Homebrew since 2014 and a longtime user. And our co-founder, Mike, who's also our CTO, is Homebrew's project leader and longest running contributor to the project. He's been involved for 15 years.
So that's perfect segue. All of you have such a deep background in both developer tools and Homebrew itself. What was the spark to actually going from, hey, this is a project that we've contributed to and seen so many benefits from, to in 10 years later, and many for many of you, right? Like, now we have to build a company around it. What's the why now for Workbrew?
There's a lot I could say about this. First of all, having worked at some of the best developer brands out there, Twilio and GitHub, and for example with Mike, being in Homebrew for such a long time, and Vanessa and her experience with MIT's Scratch, we've seen what it looks like to be on a team that has the best tools available to them. You look at GitHub, and the internal tooling that those engineers built is world class, and it's a shame that those tools aren't available to everyone. So kind of the underlying premise of us building Workbrew is that we want to bring that world-class developer experience to teams everywhere, including those teams that might not be able to invent it or build it for themselves. I think a really good example of this is a company called LaunchDarkly. So they built an entire product on top of this idea of feature flagging. Feature
Yeah.
flagging has been a thing in use by engineering teams that are like cutting edge for many, many, many years, well before LaunchDarkly existed. What LaunchDarkly did is they democratized that. They made it available to everyone. And so for us, the motivating factor is, we've seen what it looks like to have an insanely like valuable and easy to use developer infrastructure setup from our time at these great developer companies, and we want everybody to have that without having to build it themselves. The question about why now? So when I first started working with Mike back in 2013 at GitHub, I pitched him on the idea of building a company related to Homebrew, and it took me more than 10 years of convincing to get him to come along.
Yeah.
And actually, how it came to be was at the end of, in the middle of 2023, he left after spending 10 years at GitHub, and he asked me to help him find his next job. And it turned out he wanted to join me. And we started working on some things that were not, Workbrew. And we had this very pivotal conversation where he says to me, he said, John, we should really be focusing on our strengths. And I just looked at him and I said, our strength is Homebrew. You've been working on Homebrew for 15 years. I love Homebrew. I'm a contributor. I've been using it forever. We have this really, really good background. And so we didn't set out with a problem to solve. We set out with, there's got to be some problem here that we could solve. And so we went out, we just talked to lots and lots of different companies, and we found this pattern that, companies are scared of Homebrew. They're worried about their security. They're worried about compliance. They want it to be easier to get up and running. They want, this is the really great thing that I keep hearing is everybody understands that it's a very valuable tool for their developers to be productive. They want their developers to have the best tools to do their job, but they have to keep everybody safe and kind of within the guidelines of how corporations have to work. And so after having lots and lots of interviews, that's where we landed on building Workbrew into what it is today.
And in all of those interviews, you're obviously talking to people that Homebrew means a lot to them. Like, the Homebrew community is so vibrant. With your background in DevRel, how do you think about embracing that community and community just as a concept for Workbrew?
So we love the Homebrew community. We've been a part of the Homebrew community for a very long time. As I mentioned, I've been a user since the very early days. Mike's been involved for 15 years. Vanessa is now part of the project leadership committee with Homebrew. And really, it's kind of like, how do we relate to Homebrew? And the idea is that we're additive. We're a complementary product. So I have a lot of kind of demos and conversations with potential customers, and they ask me like, "How does this thing work?" And fundamentally, we are Homebrew. We use the exact same Homebrew open source project that everybody else uses, and we build on top of them. Mike likes to
Yeah.
use this analogy of Lego. There's the standard Lego, which are the the colors of the rainbow, and they come in square and rectangular shapes. And then there's the special Lego sets with the very specific pieces. What we're doing is we're building those very specific pieces. We're saying you're a big enterprise with 10,000, 50,000 developer laptops, and you need just the right piece to make sure that they're easy to deploy, they're easy to keep up to date, and everybody's secure and compliant. You've got your checks and balances in place, and so really, like it's a benefit to the end users. It's a benefit to the companies, and it's a benefit to Homebrew because you know for many years companies would come to the Homebrew open source issue tracker and say, "Hey, I need XYZ enterprise feature. Please deliver it
Yeah.
to me yesterday." And Homebrew says, "I'm an open source contributor.
Sorry.
I'm not interested in this. I don't need to do it." And so what we say is, "Yeah, we'll be happy to build that for you, and we'd love to support you in doing that." And then the other kind of like really nice thing about this complementary relationship that we have with Homebrew is that whenever we have something that can benefit the entire community, you know, we give it as a contribution into Homebrew, and it goes out to everyone.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that stood out to me the most about Workbrew when I was, getting to know you guys was in a lot of companies with open source at the core, it's sort of thinking through, okay, there's this inherent tension between the community and features and where do you draw the line between what's open
Mm-hmm.
source versus what's in the full product. And I think with Workbrew, that's so very clear and so complementary to your point, is this really is features that the enterprise needs as they think about deploying it across their organization, and that
Mm-hmm.
there's not that typical inherent tension that you see in a lot of companies.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that's really nice, just with like making that line really clear, is that Homebrew is a single player experience. You download it, you put it on your machine, you run it. You know, Workbrew, what we're selling is a separate product that is a multiplayer experience built on top of Homebrew. So our customers come to
Yeah.
us and they say, we've got 500 software engineers running on Macs. How do we keep them all in sync with each other? And we have a product that helps them do that.
Let's shift gears a little bit. What, as you think about the next steps forward and traction today, what's most exciting to you about all you've accomplished thus far?
Well, so, we're coming up on our 1.0 launch. When this video publishes, we'll be out and available generally. What I'm most excited about is the fact that we're launching a free plan on day one. So, as I mentioned, it can be difficult to get Brew installed onto a large fleet. And the premise behind the Workbrew free plan is that it's available for unlimited users and unlimited devices to anyone. It's the best way to install Brew. It integrates with your existing MDM tool. So we give you an installer, you drop it into your MDM, whether that's Jamf, Conji, Rippling, Simple MDM, any of the major MDM tools you would use. And you can roll out Brew to all of your devices in kind of a zero touch way. Whether it's a new device coming directly out of the box from Apple or an existing device that has Homebrew installed in lots of packages, it gets up and running in no time. And then the other added benefit of the free plan is it gives companies and gives teams and IT and security full visibility into everything that's going on. This is the number one thing I hear from our customers is, I just don't know what I don't know. So we've decided to make that free, unlimited users, unlimited devices, and I think it's going to be a really big impact for companies.
What was the fundraising journey like? I think people are constantly interested in sort of what the landscape looks like, how it's changing. A lot of
Mhm.
founders are, thinking about raising seed rounds. So just tell us a little bit about your process, and then and what drew you to Operator Collective.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that this is probably standard advice for founders, but we ran a process. We, kind of built a database over time of all the potential contacts that we could go out and talk to, and we talked to everybody in as condensed of a period as we could. And we had a fair amount of interest from different funds, but ultimately we ended up choosing HeavyBit as our lead investor. So HeavyBit is a really great developer-focused fund. We've known them for a long time from our experience at GitHub. We have a lot of mutual connections, so it was really easy and natural to choose them. And then also, with Operator Collective, the thing that really struck me was the fact that it's, as an organization, has such a wide reach of different companies and different operators involved. And it was that was what caught my eye when I was talking to you initially, is that this could be a real valuable resource for getting advice, for getting connections to customers, and that's really actually shown to be true. I won't mention any particular customers by name here, but there are a number of folks that when we had our early betas and our design partners, we were able to talk to you and get introductions into companies that we knew had interest, but we didn't have warm connections into. So that was what drew me to Operator Collective. And I think another thing is just the diversity of the folks involved in Operator Collective. I think it's really um, something that's not that common among investors and investment firms. And so I was really happy to have that as part of our company and work with you together.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sean. We are so excited to be working with you. And the two things you said are a big reason why I'm here. So I'm glad that landed. Well, looking forward to all that's to come and continuing to collaborate. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, thank you. Head to workbrew.com, sign up.